I'm John Stanton, editor of Gambit, and we are joined by Councilman Oliver Thomas, who, of course, is running for mayor of New Orleans. Councilman Thomas, thank you very much for coming in and speaking with us and to our audience and our readers.
And to you and your listening audience, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Why don't we start off, give us the elevator pitch for why you should be mayor.
Oliver Thomas, born and raised in the city of New Orleans, only council member to serve 3 positions on the city council, legislator of the year a few times, born and raised here. My theme for my campaign is a city that works for everyone. I tell folk the 14 years I was out of office, it seemed like, in some cases, a Laurel and Hardy show, who's on first. The plumber running the electrical department and the electrician running plumbing and basic city services with a budget that was 7 or 8 times larger, couldn't deliver basic city services. So I set out on a quest to listen to people. Even when I said I was thinking about it, I was talking to folk on every corner of the city about what was important to them, what they wanted. And probably number one each time was they wanted to feel like government worked for them. Mm-hmm. And especially as crime started going down, that wasn't the big thing that's usually on people's mind. You know, why is City Hall so far away from folk? You know, why is there taxation without representation? Mm-hmm. So for me, I wanted to use my institutional knowledge, my ability to work with anybody, and how do I offer myself as mayor to bring everyone to the table, well, to build a new table so that folk don't have a seat at the table. If it's their table, they don't need a seat. So, and just make basic services work. The 9 years I worked for a design and engineering firm, I had to deal with benchmarks, accountability, performance plans. And I don't know why city government shouldn't have to operate the same way, John.
Well, you know, I mean, that's a great place to start, I guess. You know, one of the things I think that you touched on is that folks really don't feel like anything's happening that's fixing their lives and making it better. Mm-hmm. If anything, it feels like it's the worst. And even when the city does something, it only kind of gets partway done, especially with like roads or street lights. What, in like the first, let's say your 100 days in office, mm-hmm. what are some things that people could expect to see to show that like this is a kind of a new day in New Orleans?
Well, great question. Of course, if you're going to do something your first 100 days, it has to happen a few days before the 100th. The very best people with resumes and work experience to fit their cabinet positions, their jobs. And I want to do something that no mayor has ever done. Have a retreat with civil service and a retreat with unclassified employees. Talk about what are the expectations. You know, what do we want to deliver? How do we begin to deliver and regain public trust? And for people to see that the basics, they can count on charter services that are guaranteed under the city charter and a level of work ethic and motivation. You know, when I look at myself, my life is an example of being knocked down and getting back up. So then I want to challenge our community to do the same thing. We need all hands on deck, everybody involved. And when I say everyone, the New Orleans, post this malaise, post these low expectations and low deliverables, has to be every citizen feeling good about contributing to make us the best city we can be. Mm-hmm. So, but definitely cabinet positions and expectations and performance plans, and expectations and accountability around people and contractors. If people are paying for 2 a week trash pickup, and you're doing one, you better damn well do the one. Mm-hmm. You know, a 911 call, anything after 10 seconds is life or death. Don't dig in a new street. Once it's a new street, somebody ought to be planning to do that before they do the asphalt overlay or curb and gutter. So basic being ready to make sure people see that.
I mean, a lot of that is like very laudable goals, obviously, but also some of it is going to take some time to get going. I mean, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it takes time to show effort. Mm-hmm. You know, being a former athlete, you know, coach took you out of the game if you didn't show effort right away, and especially if you didn't start delivering defensively or offensively. So for me, I don't think it's going to take I don't think it's going to take a long time for people to have a mayor that communicates with them on the front end in terms of what the expectations are from the cabinet as well as the people in the community. And I don't know why it should take a long time to deliver basic services that you paid for already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess that is a very good point. And I think one of the things that has come up kind of recently, but like I was talking with Pastor Manning in his race earlier, and he had mentioned that one thing that he thought that the city should do is to kind of go back to the old way of having more city employees doing some of like the basic stuff like infrastructure work and things like that, and not necessarily relying so much on outside contractors. Where are you on that?
So isn't that interesting now? So there was a move to privatization and downsizing government. And now, government is so far away from folk. I wrote a piece years ago in it, Democracy by Subtraction. I think one of the lines I put was that at some point, citizens are going to need a passport to get to their government, right? That's how foreign it is. But it's interesting. Jeff Goldsmith, and he was the conservative mayor of Indianapolis who found a balance, who thought years ago, I think he's one of the roadmaps, he exercised in how you get a little bit of everything to make government work. He thought he was going to privatize everything until he found out that when public employees are trained, in many cases they deliver as effectively and efficiently as the private industry. In some cases you save money. I think it's going to be a little bit of balance of both. Now, I think the reason why folks say they need more people is because it's really a sign, especially someone who worked in professional services and private industry, we haven't built enough capacity amongst our contractors and business people to do a lot of the infrastructure work. And it was evident. The Landrieu administration only programmed 7% of the money, but with 2% of the capacity to get it done. The brilliance of the Cantrell administration, they came and programmed 20 to 16% still with only 2% of the capacity to get it done. So there's going to have to be an effort to build up apprenticeship programs, partner small contractors and developers with bigger partners and build some capacity there.
Is there like one kind of part of like the basic kind of functionings of government that in your first term is going to be your priority, like roads or education or whatever? Like what is the thing that people are going to be able to look at and say, okay, well, that's a thing that we can measure him on over the next 4 years?
A sustainable effort to keep crime going in the right direction. We get kind of lost in a malaise when crime goes down. New Orleans has been the murder capital in 6 different eras. So crime goes down and we celebrate, but all the root causes are still there. Many of the programs that work are gone and it goes back up again. I would love us to be a city so that there's a sustainable way to measure the fact that we haven't had these big surges in crime. And because we have programs that deal with the root cause, recreation department, where the budget is doubled, where there's programmed activity, from esports to the obvious recreational activities that I took part of as a kid, partnership with the school system, access to universal early child care for everyone, kids proficient in reading at grade level. 69% of violent juvenile offenders are functionally illiterate. I won a lot of awards for mentoring kids, Jefferson Award and others, changing their trajectory. We know that if kids can read, if they're proficient in language and comprehension, they'll probably be successful. And working with ex-offenders. We still have more ex-offenders that return per capita than any other place in America. How do we incorporate them into the mainstream society? And then the next thing is I want to be the first mayor to have an Office of Education. I'm the only council member with an after-school program right now with the Dolores Aaron School with Renew. That works. I'd like to see that expanded. Kids don't have the family structure, especially in the African-American community. 30% of our kids grow up in a household with a male or a female head of household. Many of them are going home kind of latchkey. So how do we give them extra opportunities to be with support units, maybe a couple extra hours a day? I went to after-school programs when I was a kid, when I didn't go to practice. Let's bring that back.
I grew up in the D.C. area, and one of the really great successes of Marion Barry's time in office, the first time, was his summer's jobs program, which came during the crack wars and all that, and saved a lot of my friends' lives got saved as a result of that program. And I don't want to talk really too much about what's been happening in the city, but obviously we had some problems with paying kids who were like lifeguards and stuff like that the last few years.
It made no sense.
Would you is expanding that kind of an effort is something that would be on the table in your administration? Are you thinking about?
Yeah, but John, it would have to be. So my first term in office, I was actually part of one of the most successful eras politically. Don't forget, first time I was elected with Mayoral and then Pennington became the police chief, came from D.C. City had 424 murders. We started our after-school programs, mentoring programs, doubled the recreation budget, had the YMCA literacy program. I was the first author of the city's first domestic violence. Even though I was a man, I thought we needed to deal with that issue. And it produced results. Crime went down, double the national average. Murder rate went from 424 to 159. Home ownership went over 41% for the first time in history. And our largest demographic, the African-American middle class, started to grow. And this city, unless you have some social stability and economic stability in your largest demographic, right, you will never be the wholesome community that you want to be. It's like going to Cancun and them telling you don't go 4 blocks that way. You got to stay on the strip. Bad things happen that way, especially because of the social ills and some of the root causes. So for me, man, I just want some stability, partner with the right people, sustainable programming, and keep going in the right direction.
On crime, I got kind of a two-part here, but the first part of it is, right now the Trump administration is talking about sending the National Guard in. When they've done this in D.C., they've brought in lots of other outside agency officials and police. I think people in town are really concerned about this, and it's a big, scary deal. Where are you on whether or not that should be done? First of all, I guess.
Well, first of all, anything that can save a life, how do you tell the person whose family member or loved one lost a life? But the National Guard has a role, and when you talk about protecting this country, that they don't play in everyday policing. That's a little different. What I would much rather is that the $1 million a day that they were sending to D.C. for the National Guard, that they would give to us to deal with the root cause in programming. Now, I want to work with anyone who wants to keep us safe, but are we forgetting, and I've said this before publicly, especially being a historian and someone who hosted a morning show where I read all the reports. When New Orleans had the most police officers was when we had the most crime. 1,700 officers. We had 17 years of 300 and 400 murders. When America was most involved in fighting crime is when we had our largest crime decades and where more people went to prison and more communities were raided of vital parts of their community. So if you look at that data, then how do you repeat that without doing something different, especially if you want sustainable outcomes? And I'm about sustainable outcomes.
I know you've been working with NOPD on legislation involving real-time cameras. There is a lot of concern that that could be used to target Black men, particularly, and that does that give you pause, and has that made you reconsider this?
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. Councilmember, I was chair of criminal justice, and Councilmember Green, we offered it this time at the request of the police chief and law enforcement agencies. And what we did was we did our due diligence. We had panel discussions, public forums on it. And what we found was that, yes, the technology may be a little better, but with this president and this governor being able to sidestep or go around even the protections we put in place, it ain't a good idea. And it's not a good idea. But I grew up in the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans. I mean, it wasn't fun when the police would come, and beat me between my legs when I was 14 with a billy, or push us against the concrete walls. When people in my family would be arrested just because it was part of sport. So, no, we got to backtrack on that.
Okay. Well, sort of, I guess, not related, but unrelated. in some ways. There's been, I feel like a crackdown or an aggressive sort of nature and enforcement with on vending at second lines, and on St. Claude, and there's. And it seems to be sort of running a little counter to the tradition. I mean, this city's always had a gray economy, like an underground economy. It's just part of how it is, part of our culture. And you're mayor. You're going to get pressure from the Airbnb companies and all these other folks to clean up under the bridge.
Yeah.
What do you do?
There's definitely a balance, right? I'm born into the culture. My family members are part of Social and Pleasure Club, Second Lines that they started. Night Ward Hunters is my family Indian tribe. I was part of the Mardi Gras Indians. The only elected official that Treme did 2 episodes on fighting to save the culture. What I do is I find a way to help the underground economy. It seems like this city is good at punishing people, but not good at opportunity for people, right? Mm-hmm. So the frozen cup lady on the corner by the elementary school I went to hustled enough money selling frozen cups and Chiwi bags to send our kids to private school. That's part of New Orleans. The best hamburgers and ribs I get are from Big Dog Grill with Young Men Olympians over on the corner right off of Martin Luther King. The best shrimp fried rice I get is from the guy who does it on Simon Bolivar in Washington. And then when it's Ninth Ward CTC, when we stepping down there, he's on St. Claude and Lizardi. Mm-hmm. I don't never want to lose that. Now, if there's a question about how we permit them and give them the opportunity to have a tag while they're out there, as mayor, what I see do is people who have historical locations, allow them to have those locations, allow them to get their legal hustle on, right, and allow our traditions to continue.
Kind of related to this, there's been we have lots of big events come to New Orleans, and they're always sold to the residents as like, this is going to be this huge economic driver. We're going to get millions and millions of dollars into the city, and sometimes we do see that. I think the Taylor Swift weekend was a good example where like they kind of got out and they were spending money everywhere. But you talk to small business owners in the French Quarter, you talk to buskers in the French Quarter, musicians who played regular nights at places that got taken over, and they felt like the Super Bowl ended up costing them money. What would you do differently than has kind of traditionally been done in dealing with these sort of out of town big interests that we want to come here, but
Well, first of all, the mayor has to deal with them on the front end. And I remember mayor specifically who did that. Within the clean zone, there ought to be a lottery for vendors to be able to operate. But that's a discussion that has to happen before they get here,
right?
Not when they get here. And it's happened before. I'll never forget the Mayoral administration allowing certain nonprofits and businesses to operate within a certain boundaries around the dome. Period. Now, when you're dealing with the NFL, they tough. They literally they want to come and take over your city. But what a shrewd leader would do is have those numbers you talked about to show that we're actually losing by hosting this event. We're losing by spending almost $100 million to prepare for that event, which could have went into other potential city services. So, so fair would be at least making sure that there's a lottery so that small businesses can operate within certain boundaries. With your licensed NFL providers or merchandise people. And I think you could do that for every event.
Now, speaking of that money we spent, that's part of a budget deficit that we're dealing with right now. Now, obviously, we're getting some of that money back, especially sort of the post.
It's dripping in.
The terrorism money after the attack.
Ice Bowl.
But yeah, right. But but there's a deficit that we're facing, which is going to require some hard choices, right? And like not everything is going to necessarily always get funded. How do you do that? Like what do you look at and say this is an area where we might be able to save some money?
Well, we talked about that today. I've been around long enough that you don't sound the alarm too early on deficits. The deficits broke down into a couple part, $70 million general fund, and maybe 30 plus million in projected revenue to be collected. First of all, how do we build out the services departments to go collect what's owed? So let's go collect what's owed. And if we exceed the projections, which you usually do, fourth quarter, holiday, Saints, and then first quarter, you start getting Mardi Gras, Sugar Bowl, these special events. Historically, all of the great budget masters, even with projected deficits, have been able to make it up then. So, and I talked about this today at the budget meeting. Let's not strike too much fear in people. And what I advised them today was let's come up with a more realistic number, because the number changed today. When Councilmember Mayoral and Green and others asked, so what is a concrete number total? The administration said 72 million. Okay, so if it's 72 million and we're leaving 16 million on the table with EMS, if there are two Senate and House bills with the state, that's going to cost us 16.3 million. If there's some other revenue projections, if you got 18 million outstanding collectibles cost here, how many collectors do we need to hire to go get that? If Sewage and Water Board owes us 50 million, have they gone to WIFIA, the Water Infrastructure Finance Investment Act, to borrow money for infrastructure so they can pay us back? So there's a lot of different creative things that we can do before we finally get to what that number is. Now, if you get that number to where it's manageable, then you're talking about unfilled positions, a contract here or there. So I'm careful not to sound the alarm, because the public is afraid and in distrust enough right now.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue to, this council and his relationship with the mayor has obviously been pretty contentious and kind of crazy. Now, and I think that relationship has been problematic for sure, but also, it happening it can also be a signal potentially of good things. Like at least government is in trying to figure out things out and doing that kind of work. And you've mentioned several times that and you had mentioned it like during these fights, like why don't we all get together and sit down and try to figure it out? And I've wondered, what does that look like? I mean, because as an outsider, does that mean like the public's not going to be involved in that process, or what does that mean?
Well, it takes two to tango. We all have our moments politically, but it shouldn't stop you with working for someone on behalf of taxpayers or the people you represent. I offered a letter to the council president the first year I was elected, asking for a retreat. Why? Because I had held a retreat with the administration that the late Edgar Chase and Glenn Yancey facilitated. Other at-large members had held retreats to get everyone in the same room, especially when you have different personalities and politically ambitious people, especially when some people, in a lot of our cities, people will tell you that the only way to be mayor is to beat up on the mayor who's going out. That's a method. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't accomplish anything, but you do that to separate yourself and create a name for you, especially if it's an unpopular mayor, which is what we had. I did not, that large members didn't accept it. Now, one of the concerns was, well, how do you do it with all the council members? You did it like it was done before. You respect the sunshine laws by making sure you do it 3 at a time with different components, different cabinet members. And then you do it where you invite the press in and the public in when you're working on issues or agreeing on issues that you worked on. So you don't hide anything. You structure it in a way that you can have your meetings, but also where the press can come in to talk about what you've worked on.
Okay.
And what information that I just thought that was important because I saw a hyper-political environment, very ambitious people, and some extreme personalities. Plus, people would be nervous because Oliver Thomas was back on the chessboard again. So folk would be wondering about what I would do. And that's part of politics. I offered an open letter again that was published for another retreat going into the last 2 years because I knew what would happen the last 2 years. The administration can check out. You start competing again because people are trying to distinguish themselves. And that didn't happen again.
I think politics can be pretty bare knuckle sometimes, and it causes some bruised feelings. But like in that vein, like when you get into a fight with the council on something, and it gets pretty raw.
Yeah.
How do you
I've
turn
been in a
around
few.
and deal with that so we don't get in a situation kind of like what we've had where that has created this very poisonous kind of situation where nothing ends up getting done?
Great question, John, about having your priorities together. If the people are first, then all of the great leaders of our time, whether it's national, state, or local, have not taken away their ability to sit down with the very people they need to prioritize our community. Jim Singleton used to always tell me, your ego should be like a handkerchief. If you don't need to blow your nose, put it up. And I'm not that sensitive, man. All my fingers are out of whack from playing ball. I stabbed in the eye, razor blade, somebody's teeth, and we made up. And I've argued with some people on the council now, but that moment is done. And I don't know what it is now that we have these sensitive people that once this one thing they don't like about you, that they'll never talk to you. I think that's part of the partisan politics in D.C. that's leaking down to local communities. We need to stop that.
You've represented the East now for 4 years. It's
3 years, 7 months, yeah.
And it's, it still feels like it's a lot. There's just an enormous amount it feels almost insurmountable sometimes, I think, for folks. What has been your biggest disappointment there and what you've been able to get done so far?
The stereotype has been the biggest disappointment. New Orleans East is leading in violent crime reduction. It was the crime. It was the poster child 4 years ago. It's not anymore. The police chief has said on multiple occasions in violent crime status, the East is down. People getting shot downtown, the quarter, and in Central City.
Yep.
Again, and we don't want them shot anywhere. Why aren't we celebrating that? Pash Patel is one of the owners of the Marriott Express. He called me 3 weeks ago. He said, what are y'all doing? Now, about a year or so ago, they started investing in the Marriott Express in New Orleans East. Marriott had a grand opening. So he called me and he said, man, why do y'all keep doing that? I said, Pash, what are you talking about? He said, man, we've been 85, 70% occupancy. He said, the Marriott brand is a brand that we built. We picked New Orleans East because we thought it was going in the right direction. It was a great investment and we've been successful. Why do y'all keep talking bad about the East on social media and on the internet because of the election? He says, it's going to affect my bookings. He said that misinformation spreads to people and they'll start thinking there's something wrong with booking my business. So why don't we talk about, highlight the East? The East, 7,000 acres of developable business park, 7,000 acres. 27 subdivisions of the highest African-American earners of any municipal district in the South. 9.5 miles of waterway, 5 of those 9 miles of beachfront. 2 of the busiest waterways in North America, the intercoastal, the industrial. They feed the 33-state tributary system that America can't survive without with commerce. Accessed by railway and interstate from Jacksonville all the way to Santa Monica. The #1 wildlife refuge in North America. The largest migratory period of any wildlife refuge in North America by use of Sauvage. Birding is an international billion-dollar industry. We got it. Why aren't we talking about those assets?
I mean, it does feel like there's a disconnect, right?
Well, something happened, and I'm the only person who studied it to take a look at it like this. Post-Katrina, first of all, they're not building any more malls. So when you hear people kind of fantasize about Lake Forest Plaza and bringing the malls back, you see what's happening with the malls in the area.
Right, yeah.
And I was able to prove it when my wife and daughter were out of town. I stacked all of their Amazon packages up in the middle of the island in the kitchen. That's your mall right there.
Right.
Right? So for me, the stereotype with the East, especially post-Katrina, didn't help because there were a couple things that happened. There was a demographic shift post-Katrina. naturally, because 80% of the city was underwater. Before that, though, Hope 6 started to re-envision how you did with public housing, multi-use, right? Started happening all over the country. Then Katrina compounded it. There were only 2 places that could absorb those populations that had multi-unit complexes, New Orleans East and Algiers. Mm-hmm. But what happened? So once that population shift happened and that demographic shift happened, those people were pushed to the edges of the community. But, and this is why, it's not rocket science to me. Every agency that has received billions of dollars or millions of dollars to deal with that service population, what did they do? They stayed downtown. Mm-hmm. They don't have an annex or a headquarters with their service demographic is. So how are you surprised when you push your service population to the edges of the community, especially in a city where transportation is not that great? We don't have real regional transportation. So what I've been doing the last few years is the United Way has their Prosperity Center on the corner of Crowder and Morrison. Children's Hospital, I've been courting them for 2 years. I finally convinced them that guess where most black babies are being born now? In the largest New Orleans East. They opened up a pediatric center now in New Orleans East. We have $11 million investment on the corner of Crowder. And Chef's going to be the largest EV and gas station and food patio in the city. So it's numerous things like that people would rather talk about what we don't have than build on the assets. And then for the first time, we had the Nike Super Bowl experience in New Orleans East. Gordon Ramsay did his international food show from The Verdict in New Orleans East. Ian McNulty is highlighting Tynola, Orleans Brothers. So it definitely headed in the right direction. Now, politically, people are going to say, yeah, Oliver, you did all that, but you didn't do this.
Right,
That's just the nature of what it is.
Well, we can maybe end it on this. I think right now we're seeing alarming numbers of people are saying they're going to leave the city, or very less than 50% know for sure they're going to be here long term at this point. And I think for the diaspora of people that left after Katrina or that have left sort of in the last few years, they do see nothing but negative kind of talk about crime and about the problems of the city, and that's all they see. But what beyond simply just like what can the mayor do? What would you do as mayor to not only just change that conversation, but to bring people home?
Well, and I'm first of all, I'm glad you said that. I have said publicly, everybody is yes, we want to keep people here, but man, we lost 150,000 people. And if you look at migration now, southern migration, right? Other parts of the country, people are migrating back to where they came from. Man, I don't want a city just to maintain our population. I want it to be where folk who left can say, man, while I'm retiring, while a lot of the kids are older, New Orleans is an option to come back home. Thank you for bringing it up. But what they want to see is better schools, better services. We got to continue being safe, make this effort sustainable, and we got to diversify our economy. We can't continue to be the sliver by the river or just the tourism industry because we're just a pass-through. We generate, I would love to sit with the governor and say, hey, look, we want to ask y'all for a penny if you let us keep everything we generate in our boundaries. They would never accept that deal. But no, I want to be the mayor that also motivates people. And I tell folk all the time, right? Who better to be the mayor than somebody who's been locked up, locked out, and knocked down? That can look people in the eye and say, ain't no excuses, man. If I did it, if there's a city that's knocked down that needs to get up, then let's do it together. Let's the one thing I can do that a lot of folk who can't is that I can walk in certain communities and say, hey, I need y'all to put up. I need y'all to work with these kids. I need y'all help. From peacekeepers, I've solved about 8 mediations with people who were talking about shooting each other. They called me in the room to sit them down on both sides. Put your guns down. It's foolish. It's not a big deal. I've had 200 men get together to say, hey, man, no, we need y'all involved in the community. And I want to motivate our city, man, to do the same thing, but I also want to create an environment where the city works, the services works. One of the things that got me to boast, and you'll remember this. Remember when they did the drainage project on Napoleon, that big multi-million-dollar drainage project?
Yeah.
And then the paper came back and did an article about they started covering up the drains on the drainage project. Shouldn't some project manager have been walking behind the concrete saying, "Oh no, drain, nope, yeah, no, drain,
Right,
nope, drain"? That's not money, man. That's giving a damn. That's work ethic. That's having a job to do. I'm still not a believer that if we can get 90, 100% output from the employees we have now, who knows how many people we need? And
How
I'm
much do you think we're
serious.
getting right now from folks?
We're getting whatever they want to give. When I worked outside the city, just waiting on permits and waiting on departments to approve contracts, that didn't make sense to me. You're talking about an established company that has a relationship with engineers who've worked on every part of the system here, that have worked with the city for decades, and we got projects held up in departments because somebody questioned the part of the submittal. Then that part of the submittal was answered, and then your solution was to reroute it again. Everybody else checked off. Why reroute it again? So it's simple things like that I think can make a difference right away.
Okay. Right. Well, I really appreciate you coming in to talk to
thank
us.
you.
And, and good luck with the race.
Appreciate it, man. Bless you
All
and your family, man.